the Empire State Building, One World Trade, Chrysler, Flatiron, and One Vanderbilt. Every city has its own character. And character can be seen in the people, the food, and the skyline. For many cities around the world, you can take one look at their skyline and instantly recognize it. And New York is no different. So in this video, we are going to cover 5 buildings that give New York City its unique silhouette. I can list 10 or maybe even more of them, but then this video will be over a half hour long. So to keep it short, we're going to talk about 5 of these buildings, and perhaps in a future video, we can talk about the other buildings. So let's start with the most iconic, the Empire State Building. There's a lot to say about the Empire State Building because this is a very, very famous building. It's old. It's almost 100 years old. It's 94 years old. So it's had a lot of time to be featured in many, many movies and shows. I mean, growing up, I feel like the Empire State Building is synonymous with King Kong. They go hand in hand. They're partners for life. When it was built, the Empire State Building was the world's tallest building, and it held that title for 40 years, up until the Twin Towers were built. By the time the Twin Towers collapsed, 50 years had gone by, so there had been other buildings around the world that have claimed tallest building in the world. So the Empire State Building couldn't reclaim that throne. But speaking of collapse, there was one point in history, I think it was in 1945, there was a B-25 bomber that crashed into the Empire State Building. 14 people died, but the building itself remained structurally sound. So there's gotta be something with that old school steel. And the building of this was remarkable at that time. They built this in just 1 year and 45 days. That's 410 days. During that time, buildings were usually built within 2 to 3 years, but they built it in less than 2 years. The funny thing about that though is, yeah, they finished building it quite quickly, but when it opened during the time of the Great Depression. So they had a hard time renting out a lot of the office spaces. And the joke was, it was called the Empty State Building. It was originally designed to have a docking station for dirigibles like a blimp or a zeppelin, but that was scrapped. Apparently, it was too windy and kind of impractical. But what I like about the Empire State Building are the lights at night. Every night, the colors change to celebrate holidays, commemorate events, or support social causes. During the height of the pandemic in 2020, there was a time where the lights were red. They were pulsing. I think it was to mimic a beating heart. But in the height of the doom and gloom and sadness and depression that everybody was feeling, I don't think seeing a pulsing red light on top of one of the tallest buildings in New York was a good idea. It wasn't a good look, in my opinion. The Empire State Building is located in Midtown Manhattan, right near Koreatown and Macy's flagship store. It does have an observatory, but the observatory is kind of cramped and I think a bit outdated. And then there's those grills that block your view. My recommendation is, instead of going to Empire State Building, is to go to Top of the Rock. This will have a better unobstructed view of the city and of the Empire State Building itself. The One World Trade Building has a symbolic height. Its height without the antenna is the same height as the original Twin Towers. And its height with the antenna is the date of the US Declaration of Independence. And no, it's not the tallest building in the world, not even the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th tallest. It's the 7th tallest. But it is the tallest building on this side of the globe. The One World Trade Building is in Lower Manhattan in the financial district, and it stands right next to the footprint of the original Twin Towers. And One World Trade is a building that's part of the World Trade Center complex. There's gonna be 2 World Trade, 3 World Trade, 4 World Trade. And I made a video that explained the complex and its breakdown. Check that out, link is in the description. And being so tall, it makes sense to have an observatory. Its observatory is not open air, but the view is incredible. If you go up there on a clear day, you can see for miles. According to the website, you can see for 45 5 miles. You can see so far that you start to see the curvature of the earth. It's wild. On the anniversary of 9/11, there's this thing called Tribute in Light. It's when two beams of light are turned on from dusk till dawn to commemorate the Twin Towers. Although it looks like it's coming from the original footprint of the Twin Towers, it's actually a few blocks down at the Battery Park Garage. I think that I like about the World Trade is how well it blends in with the sky. On a blue, sunny day, it just blends in really well. Once upon the 1930s, there was a competition, and the competition was between the builders of the Chrysler Building and the Bank of Manhattan Trust Building that's now called 40 Wall Street. These two buildings were competing to be the tallest building in the world. As the Chrysler Building was being built, inside of it, the architects secretly built the spiral that would be at the top of the building. And so when the Bank of Manhattan Trust Building was nearing its completion, the builders of the Chrysler immediately hoisted up that spiral, and it only took them about an hour and a half to do that. And instantly, the Chrysler Building became the tallest building in the world. And it held that title for 11 months, because at that point, the Empire State Building was built. But as beautiful as it is, as tall as it is, it does not have an observation deck. You can go into the lobby, and that's as far as the public can go. Most people admire the Chrysler Building from the outside. If you look at the New York skyline, it's one of the most recognizable buildings out there. It's not boxy or angular. It has curves, and you don't often see that in buildings, so it's very distinguishable. If you look at the Chrysler Building, at least when I look at it, I'm reminded of the old world automobiles, those classic automobiles, and it was inspired by the zeitgeist of that era, and it was owned by Walter Chrysler, as in Chrysler the car brand. Because of its curved, unique look, which is different from all the other buildings in New York, the Chrysler is actually my favorite building, which brings me to this part of the video where I introduce a mystery box. What is in this mystery box, you might ask? Well, it's a mystery.
We happy? Yeah, we happy.
This is the first ever Urban Caffeine Happy New Yorking mystery box. In it is an assortment of merchandise to include a couple things that I'm not currently selling in the shop and you won't find anywhere else. I'm only selling this for a limited time. This is only gonna be in the shop for 2 weeks or until I run out, and it's very, very limited. I'm probably gonna only make 10 of these. And as a hint, one of the exclusive items in this box is related to the Chrysler Building. So if you love the Chrysler Building or know somebody who loves the Chrysler Building, this mystery box might be for you. And it's available at shop.urbancaffeine.com or the link in the description. The Flatiron Building is known for its shape, and it's named the Flatiron because it actually looks like a clothing iron. The shape is so extreme that at the narrowest portion, it's only about 6.5 feet wide. You know what else is 6.5 feet wide? The height of Josh Allen, who's the current quarterback of the New York Buffalo Bills. So if you lay Josh Allen to the side, he would be able to fit the narrowest portion of the Flatiron Building. When this was first built, there were mixed reactions. Some people thought this was cool and interesting in a good way. Others thought that it was weird and unstable, and there was even a rumor that it was gonna topple over. But it did not topple over, but it did cause some negative effects on the wind pattern in that area. The building is located at the intersection of 23rd Street, 5th Avenue, and Broadway. Because of the shape of the building, it created wind currents in this area. And because of the wind currents, women back then who would walk by it, their skirts would be lifted up and there would be men standing by waiting for this to happen. So there were police that all they did was to disperse the crowd waiting for the women's skirts to be blown by the wind. The Flatiron Building is not open to the public, but its iconic shape is enjoyable from the outside, just like the Chrysler Building. And lastly, a very new building is One Vanderbilt. One Vanderbilt was nearing its completion in early 2020, but as we know, the city was shutting down. The city shut down in March. Even with the shutdown and all the stalls in construction, it's still finished about on schedule. One Vanderbilt is in Midtown Manhattan, and notable about it is it's right next to Grand Central Terminal. In fact, there are underground tunnels between One Vanderbilt and Grand Central Terminal. Well, actually, there are a lot of underground tunnels from Grand Central and other buildings nearby. But one thing One Vanderbilt is known for is its observation deck called the Summit. It's designed to be an immersive experience. It has mirrored floors and some mirrored walls. Highly Instagrammable. When it first opened up, it was so hot. I remember my social media feed was just that. The Summit, the mirrored floors, the interactive experience. When there's a new attraction in New York, the level of popularity is just unmatched. One cool thing that I do love about One Vanderbilt is how it's lit up at night. It has this ghostly effect where its outline seems brighter than the building itself. It's almost like a white pencil etching in the sky. I did leave out a lot of other structures that make New York's skyline distinct. We didn't talk about the Statue of Liberty, although it's not a building, it's still an essential part of the New York City skyline. The Brooklyn Bridge in the same boat, Bank of America Tower, and 30 Rockefeller. Maybe we'll make a part 2 of this video, we'll see. Comment down below. And don't forget, the first ever Urban Caffeine Happy New Yorking mystery box is available for sale for the next couple of weeks. Link to this is in the description below, or go to shop.urbancaffeine.com. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next video, Happy New Yorking.